What's up, YouTube? Have you ever wanted to draw a fantasy map in Procreate? Well, that's what we're here to talk about today. Welcome back. My name is Ben Nielsen. I'm a media design educator, and today we're talking about drawing fantasy maps in the iPad app Procreate. So today's going to be a little bit different. My studio is a little bit of a mess because of a project we've got going on, so we're just going to be screencasting today, and we're going to be looking at how we would draw a fantasy map. The key to drawing a fantasy map is to have some fantasy map brushes. So right here I have this brush pack called Map Class that I'm going to be using, as well as some other brushes that I've created. This pack comes from my class, Intro to Procreate Brush Making brushes for your fantasy map. And you can go ahead and take that class by clicking the link in the description below if you want to. But today we're just going to be using the brushes that I have already created here. I also have some from my prep for that, which is the map test stampers. But basically how it breaks down is you need 3 types of brushes to really create a fantasy map kind of in the style that you see in a lot of fantasy books. You need some stamp brushes. So for example, this cave brush here, it is a stamp brush. You just tap and you can lay down a cave like that. Okay, I'm going to undo that really quick. So you need stamp brushes for kind of your icons, that kind of thing. And then you need outline brushes to do things like rivers and roads. So let's go ahead and grab a river here. And so you can see that creates an outline all in one pass, so you can create your river. And then you also need pattern brushes so that you can lay down patterns like deserts or water or swamps or that kind of thing. So if we wanted the side of this to be desert, we'd go ahead and take our desert brush and we'd lay that down right here. So those are the 3 basic types of brushes that you need to create a fantasy map. And you can download most of the brushes that I'm using today from the pack that I have available for free on Gumroad. So you can go ahead and check that out in the description below. You can take the class as well if you wanted to make your own brushes. But today we're just talking about how we would draw. So when you're drawing a fantasy map, it's good if you have some idea of what you are kind of creating. I'm just kind of free-flowing here, but I know I've got this river that's basically dividing my fantasy map into 2 sides here. Okay, I'm going to undo my desert here because my desert there wouldn't make a ton of sense. I need some reason for there to be a desert next to a river, so we're going to have to block off the sides of the river here with mountains. So let's go ahead and grab our basic mountain brush, and this is a stamp brush, so when we tap it, it's just going to lay it down. So we need some mountains that are going to basically block out the water so that we can put our desert on the other side. So when you're creating a fantasy world, you want it to kind of make sense, you know, so that when people look at it, they're not like, what's going on with that? So we're laying down our mountains here. We've got a big old mountain range. And for me right now, each of these is not going to be representing actual individual peaks. It's more just representing a mountain range there. So I'm going to go ahead and make a new layer though and move that below, because now I want to lay my desert layer down below my other layer so that I can erase it kind of freely without worrying about the rest of it. So I can just kind of lay down my desert and then I can erase where I need to without worrying about the rest of the map. So let's go ahead and lay this desert down, and you can see that I'm not being too careful about going underneath the mountains there because I can just go ahead and erase that later when I need to. So we're going to get plenty of desert here. I could increase my brush size so that I can lay it down a little bit faster. So we've got the desert. Let's go ahead and erase the part under the mountains. So I'm just going to grab an eraser. Medium blend should work fine. And because I'm just on that layer, I can go ahead and I can just erase the part that's under the mountains. And they'll look less like Dalmatian mountains and more like what they actually are. Okay, so we've got our mountains here. On the other side of the river, I'm going to add in a forest. Let's go ahead and lay down our stamps. This is going to be a pine tree forest. So we'll go ahead and use this guy here. So here you can kind of see the difference between using a pattern brush and using a stamp brush to create terrain. So when you're using a stamp brush to create terrain, you're going to be doing a lot more clicking like I'm doing here, whereas I'm doing a lot more of strokes with my pattern brush when I'm doing the desert. Always remember that a 2-finger tap in Procreate is undo, so if you need to undo something, just undo it like that. Easy peasy. And this way we can kind of lay out our forest here. Now what I didn't do was actually put my forest on another layer, which I probably could have done, and that would have then given me more control later. But this will probably be okay for now. So we've got a nice big pine forest over here, but there isn't a lot of intriguing stuff on this map right now. There isn't really a place to go or anything, so we're going to want to lay down some roads and some cities here. So I have a couple of icons for those things as well. Now, obviously, doing a map this way is much quicker than drawing like each of these trees and mounts by hand and that kind of thing, but it's still kind of a laborious process to get it all laid down. That's just part of the creative work here. So let's go ahead and we'll make another river, and I'll start a new layer here. Do a river. It's going to run along the edge of the forest this way and feed into the other one. Do that right there, and then we just need to come in and do a little fine tipped erasing right here to make them look like they're melding. Okay, so we've kind of segmented off our area here, and then on the other side of this river, let's go ahead and we'll lay down some grasses. Okay, so we've got kind of the main sections and the main terrain. Let's go ahead and add a new layer to lay down these details. I'm going to drag that to the top, and then we'll go ahead and place our city. Make it a little bit big here and see how that looks. We have one way out in the desert that someone might have to go to, and then of course we'll want to erase underneath on that desert layer there. And now we'll want to have a road running to it. So let's go ahead and we will grab another one, which is a basic outline brush here. Let's go ahead and make sure we're on the top layer here. Just go ahead and run a simple road down here. Then we'll go ahead and erase on our desert layer. So a fantasy map is a really fun way to get into map making just because it doesn't really require you to know any actual like cartographic techniques. It's pretty easy there because you're just working in a fantasy world, so it's a good place to kind of get started and use your imagination there. Go ahead and erase just the ends of this road. That's one thing with the outline brush, is it will create a little end that you don't necessarily want. So we'll erase those. So maybe someone has to run out into the desert to finish some quest or something at that forbidden city. You get to really kind of use your imagination. Let's go ahead and we'll place a cave over in the woods someone might want to go to. And of course it's a cave in the woods, so we're not going to have a road running to that one. Like that. So we have a few details in here, and of course any good fantasy map is going to need a castle. Let's go ahead and grab our castle here. We're going to put our castle down here, right where the rivers are meeting. That would be a great place for castle. I think I want it to be a little bit bigger than that. Oops, that's too big. Put our castle there. And that's the basics of how you can go about doing a fantasy map using those three basic type of brushes. So your stamp brush, your outline brush, and your pattern brush are all really useful when you're doing this kind of fantasy map work. Again, the way to make all these brushes can be found on my class on an intro to brush making in Procreate, creating fantasy maps. So if you want to learn more about that, you can go ahead and check that out in the description below. And those fantasy map brushes are my holiday gift to you, so you can pick those up from Gumroad for free if you just click the link in the description below. So if you want to be able to make your own fantasy maps, that's a good place for you to get started. Okay, we'll chat in the comments. I hope you have some really happy holidays, and I will see you in the next video.